The dark stone room felt cold. Torches flickered on the walls, making shadows dance like hungry ghosts. Adana stood still, her hands shaking. Not from fear. From knowing this was the end. Across the stone table, Ikon leaned back in his carved chair. He smiled a wide, cruel smile. He thought he had won. His fingers tapped a bone knife twice before slicing his palm. Blood dripped onto the ancient contract. Finally, he chuckled, his voice echoing. Your spirit belongs to the circle now. Just useless dead weight. The air grew heavy. Silent. Then the high priest spoke. His voice was like gravel. Before the pact seals, one more truth must bleed. He unrolled a scroll covered in glowing red symbols. With each word he read, Ikon's smile cracked. Because Adana wasn't leaving empty. She was walking out with power darker than the circle had ever known. In the beginning, Adana met Ikon under a blood-red moon. He was young then, just 19. Full of fire and wild magic. Her hair braided with silver bells that sang when she laughed. He believed in love. Believed in building a future with him. Ikon had big dreams. He wanted to join the Shadowed Circle, a secret society of billionaires and witches. They controlled governments. Made wars. Fed on human fear. Adana stood by him. She had her own dream too. To become a forest guardian, protecting the sacred trees and speaking with animal spirits. But she put it aside. She thought helping him rise was more important. She worked hard for him. By day she gathered rare herbs in cursed swamps. She got bitten by venomous snakes. Her skin burned from poison thorns. By night she cooked Ikon meals laced with strength spells. Cleaned their hut with enchanted brooms. Cheered him on when circle trials broke his bones. When they had no money for ritual gold, Adana didn't cry. She sold her mother's spirit necklace, a thing of pure starlight. He believed that was love. If he rises, we rise together, she whispered to the wind. She felt strong, not weak. She trusted her sacrifices would come back to her. She didn't know the truth. While she lifted him up, Ikon was forgetting her. Forgetting her bloody hands pulling him from dark magic traps. Forgetting her voice calming his nightmares. But Adana saw everything. She stayed quiet. Watched. Remembered. When Ikon passed the circle's final test, everything changed. He wore robes spun from nightmare threads. Lived in a skyscraper that touched the clouds. Had feasts with presidents and demons. Money flowed like black rivers. People bowed to him. Called him Shadow King. But as his world grew, Adana shrunk. The man who once kissed her under moonlight now walked ahead. Like she was air. At parties he introduced her as, my little servant. Not his wife. No one knew she fought a lava demon for him. No one knew she gave up her forest magic. To them she was just a shadow. A quiet thing serving cursed wine. Smiling. Staying silent. It hurt. But Adana didn't scream. She watched him laugh with blood witches and billionaires. Pretending she was never part of his story. Then one night she heard words that cut deeper than any knife. Ikon laughed with his new friends. Adana, he said, swirling dark wine. Just a village girl. A phase we all outgrow. The others laughed. No one saw her eyes. No one saw the pain. She stood there holding a tray of still beating hearts. Feeling smaller than a grain of sand. Invisible. The man she loved acted like she was nothing. He didn't see the woman who bled for him. Only someone to throw away. But Adana didn't cry. She didn't fall. Inside her broken heart, a cold fire started to burn. She remembered who she was before him. A child who spoke to thunder. A girl who healed broken birds. This time she wouldn't disappear. One midnight, Adana couldn't sleep. Ikon came home late. Went to his ritual room. Made a spirit call. She didn't mean to listen. But his voice slithered under the door. Harsh. He laughed with his circle brother. Then he said the words that froze her blood. Adana. Sweet, but I deserve better now. A queen. Not some dirt magic peasant. For a moment time stopped. Adana held her breath. Her heart didn't break. It turned to ice. Silent. Deadly. She waited for tears. None came. She felt like a ghost haunting her own life. Slowly she walked to the attic. A place she hadn't entered in 7 years. Dust covered everything. In the corner sat her grandmother's spirit drum. Made from moondeer skin. Last played when Adana was 15. That night she wiped off the dust. Her fingers touched the cold surface. She closed her eyes and remembered ancient songs, forest spells, power buried deep. For the first time in years she smiled. Not happy, dangerous. That drum was her. The real her. The girl who talked to storms before Econ silenced her. She didn't confront him. Didn't scream. She stayed calm, knowing something had changed forever. If he thought she was nothing, fine. She wouldn't argue. She would rise. Not for him. For herself. And while Econ laughed with his circle, thinking her weak in the shadows, Adana was already stepping back into her true darkness. For the next year Adana lived two lives. By day she played the quiet wife. Cooked poisonous meals. Cleaned Econ's ritual knives. Smiled blithely. By night when the skyscraper slept she crept to the attic. Beat the spirit drum under the moon. Softly. So soft no one heard. She drew symbols in her own blood on the floor. Called animal spirits wolves with star eyes, crows that whispered secrets. She didn't tell a soul. No one knew she was rebuilding her forest magic. Her hands moved with purpose. Her heart filled with icy rage. She hid her power. Used a spirit name Thorned Root. Under that name she began healing the rich and powerful. Curing their curses. Banishing their demons. Word spread in dark corners. Orders came. Gold piled up. Comments praised the mysterious forest witch. She answered in riddles. Hiding who she truly was. All while Econ sat feet away bragging to circle leaders. These so-called nature witches? He sneered, drinking liquid shadow. Weak. Dirt magic fools. Adana would sit in the corner, stitching a poisoned robe, listening. He didn't know the witch he mocked was his silent wife. Building something bigger than his circle. Sometimes his words stung. But she used the pain. Like fuel for her fire. Every time he laughed at magic like hers she chanted louder. Beat her drum harder. She wasn't doing this for revenge. She was doing it to prove her own soul still burned. And the best part? He never sensed a thing. Every time Econ walked past her like air, every time he boasted on spirit calls, Adana stayed silent. She didn't need him to see. Not yet. Because soon the whole world would feel her power. And when that day came it wouldn't be loud. It would be quiet. Deadly quiet. Like a snake in the grass. But this time the silence would scream. One evening Adana brought Econ his favorite meal, black soup made from bat wings. She carried it to his high tower office. Hoping maybe, just maybe, they could eat like they used to. Under the stars. Before the circle. But when she arrived Econ wasn't there. His assistant sat at the obsidian desk. A woman with snake tattoos and cold eyes. Adana had seen her before. Never spoken to her. The woman looked up. Smirked at the soup. Then leaned back. Her belly was swollen. Pregnant. Adana's breath caught. Before she could speak the woman laughed. A sharp, cruel sound. You're the wife? Huh. Econ told me you were just his mad cousin. Locked in the attic. Adana's heart stopped. She stood frozen. Holding the hot soup. Her mind screamed. But her face. Calm. Like still water. That one sentence was a knife. Not just from the woman. From Econ. All her sacrifices. Her poisoned hands. Her souled necklace. And this was her reward. Lies. Betrayal. A baby with a woman who didn't even know her name. But Adana didn't shout. Didn't drop the soup. She nodded once. Turned. Walked out with slow, steady steps. Not weak. Breaking free. As the tower door closed behind her she breathed the night air. Pulled out a bone whistle. Blew a silent note. A shadow wolf appeared. She whispered, "Bring the high priest. It's time." That moment wasn't her end. It was her beginning. She didn't need more proof. She had seen enough. Econ had lied. Cheated. Tried to bury her. Now it was her turn. No begging. No crying. Done. The woman he thought would die silent was already walking away. When Adana called for the circle's justice, Econ laughed. He strutted through their skyscraper, grinning. Telling his friends she'd crawl back. Beg for his shadow magic. She's nothing without me, he bragged. A speck of dirt. He planned to crush her in the ritual court. Take her last drop of magic. But Econ didn't know Adana's secret. She'd spent a year building her power. Under a name he never noticed. While he mocked dirt witches, she became the most feared healer in the world. All hidden. On the day of the ritual, Ekon swaggered into the stone chamber. Wearing robes of living shadow. Firking. He whispered to the high priest, "Just end her. She has no power here." But when the high priest asked Adana to confess her magic, she stood. Pulled a scroll from her ragged dress. Unrolled it. Glowing green symbols blazed her true spirit name. Thornroot. The room gasped. The scroll showed everything. Secret deals with presidents. Cures for plagues. Gold mountains. A global web of power. Ekon's smile vanished. His eyes widened in horror. "Thorned root," he whispered. It sounded familiar, like whispers in dark markets, the witch he'd called weak. Now the circle leaned in. Watching. The high priest's voice boomed. "She owns the magic you crave. She walks with ancient spirits. She is everything." Adana didn't look at Ekon. Didn't gloat. She stood calm. Proud. Because this wasn't defeat. It was her door to freedom. She had walked from pain. Betrayal. Darkness. Stepped into her true power. And the sweetest part? Khan never saw it coming. The circle court fell silent as the high priest read Adana's scroll. Green fire symbols danced in the air. Each word burned brighter. Healing kings. Controlling storms. Commanding armies of tree spirits. The room felt heavy. Hot. Ekon's shadow robes seemed to shrink. His smirk melted like wax. He gripped the stone table. Knuckles white. "Thorned root is you," he choked out. Adana turned. Slow. Her eyes weren't sad or angry. Just cold. Endless cold. Then she smiled. A real smile. Sharp as broken glass. Not for revenge. For truth. She leaned close. Whispered so only he heard, "It was always me. You just never looked." The words hit him like a curse. For years she'd been beside him. Invisible. Ignored. But all that time she'd been growing. A forest in the dark. Blind. Arrogant. Now in front of the circle's highest lords he had to listen. To her power. Her glory. The woman he called nothing was now everything. He slumped in his chair. Speechless. Frozen. Adana didn't watch his fall. He didn't need to. Her silence had spoken. He was the storm. He was just dust. After the truth blazed, Adana could have taken everything. Ekon's skyscraper. His shadow gold. His demon servants. The circle's law gave her the right. Many expected her to break him. Tear his magic out. But she didn't. Adana didn't want his tower. It stank of lies and pain. Didn't want his gold. Tainted with screams. He let him keep it all. The cursed jewels. The blood contracts. The shadow cloaks. None of it mattered now. She had something more precious. Peace. True peace. What Adana took was her freedom. She walked from that stone room with her head high. No screams. No curses. Just quiet strength. And that quiet. Louder than any spell. More than that, she walked out with her empire. Thorned Root's name echoed across the world. A power built by her own bloody hands. In secret. From nothing. Loved by the weak. Feared by the strong. And now the circle knew. She didn't need Ekon's name. She had made her own. And deepest of all, Adana walked with peace. The kind that comes when you stop begging for love. She wasn't his shadow anymore. She was her own dark sun. And it felt good. Better than revenge. Better than his rotting gold. She didn't destroy Ekon. Didn't curse his soul. She simply grew. Rose above his lies. His betrayals. His blindness. He became bigger than his circle. Bigger than his dreams. Khan kept his things. But he lost her. The woman who bled for him. Believed in him. And that loss. No magic could fix it. Adana didn't take revenge. She took her crown. And wore it in terrible silence. 6 months later, Ekon sat alone in a waiting room. Bored. Tapping his clawed fingers. He picked up a spirit newspaper. Flipped pages. Then froze. There on the front was a picture that stopped his heart. Adana. Dressed in living vines and thundercloud silk. Eyes blazing with wild power. Headline screaming, "Thorned Root unmasked. The forest queen who bend the world." He stared. Couldn't move. The article told her story. The quiet wife. The hidden witch. The empire built in shadows. her magic now flowing through every forest, every storm, every beating heart. Ikon's hand shook. He never imagined this. Not for her. Not without him. Yet here she was. Not just strong. Worshipped. Not just alive. A goddess. Meanwhile, in a jungle temple, Adana packed a small bag. Vines curled at her feet. Storm clouds waited outside. She had just finished speaking to the hurricane winds. Her true voice. Her real power. And this was only the beginning. The spirit newspaper trembled in Ikon's clawed hand. Adana's face stared back. Not the quiet shadow he'd discarded, but a queen carved from moonlight and storm. Vines snaked through her braids, alive with tiny glowing thorns. Thundercloud silk draped her shoulders, crackling with unseen energy. Her eyes, they held the ancient cold fire of deep forests, of rivers that remember drowned cities. The headline burned his vision. Thorned root unmasked, the forest queen who bent the world. He couldn't breathe. The waiting room's polished obsidian walls seemed to close in, reflecting his own pale, shocked face. The article screamed her truth. Silent wife to shadowed circle elite Ikon. Secretly rebuilt her ancestral forest magic, became Thorned Root, the most sought-after spirit healer for global elites. Cured the uncurable, banished elder nightmares. Network spans presidents, warlords, even whispered contact with old gods. Her power now weaves through every sacred grove, every storm cloud, the very roots beneath our feet. Ikon's blood turned to ice. Thorned Root. The name had haunted the circle's darkest corners. A whisper of impossible cures, of prices paid not in gold, but in secrets and fealty. He'd dismissed it as peasant superstition, the desperate hopes of the weak. He'd mocked it to her face, while she sat stitching his poisoned robes, listening. While she was it. A low growl rumbled in the waiting room's silence, not from him but from the polished stone floor. Thin green tendrils, sharp as knives, pushed through microscopic cracks, coiling around the leg of his chair. He jerked back. Her power. Already here. Already claiming spaces he thought safe. 6 months earlier, the night after the circle court. Adana didn't return to the skyscraper piercing the clouds. She walked away from the circle's dark stone fortress, not onto city streets, but into the wall of a nearby ancient park. The stone didn't resist. It sighed like old bone and parted, vines curling aside like respectful servants. Inside the air hummed. Ancient trees, unseen by city eyes, towered. Their bark shimmered with faint, trapped starlight. This was her sanctuary, bought not with Ikon's shadow gold, but with whispered promises to the earth spirits during her year of silence. A figure waited beneath the oldest tree. A man whose skin looked like polished river stone, eyes deep pools reflecting galaxies. The high priest. Not of the circle but of the old ways. He bowed his head, deeper than he ever had for Ikon's masters. Thorned Root. His voice was the rustle of dry leaves. The pact is sealed. The circle's justice is done. Their laws bind Ikon, not you. What now, forest queen? Adana touched the spirit drum hanging at her hip. Its moon-deer skin felt warm, alive. Now, she said, her voice clear and cold as a mountain spring, I reclaim what was stolen. Not things. The balance. She knelt, pressing her palms flat onto the rich, dark soil. She didn't chant. She remembered. Remembered the feel of untainted earth, the song of a bird before steel cages, the sigh of a forest breathing freely. Power, thick and green and ancient, surged up her arms. It wasn't the sharp, hungry magic of the circle. It was older, deeper, more terrible in its patient strength. Vines erupted around her, not violently but with swift, inevitable purpose. They wove a throne of living thorns and night-blooming flowers. Moss carpeted the ground. Fireflies, drawn from hidden places, pulsed like fallen stars. In the heart of the forgotten city park, a sliver of the primordial world awoke. The high priest watched, awe and fear warring on his stony face. They will come for you, Thorned Root. The circle does not suffer power outside its control. Ikon is broken, but his masters, they are spiders in a vast dark web. Adana settled onto the thorny throne. It didn't pierce her, it embraced her. Let them come, she murmured, watching a luminous moth land on her finger. Let them walk into my forest. present day at Econ's tower. The opulent skyscraper felt hollow. Econ paced his shadow-lined office. The spirit newspaper crumpled on his obsidian desk. Adana's face mocked him. Every flicker of the enchanted light seemed tinged with green. Every whisper of the air conditioning sounded like rustling leaves. Paranoia, he told himself. Asterisk, she's in some jungle. Far away. Asterisk. His assistant, Celicy, the snake-tattooed woman heavy with his child, entered silently. Her eyes, usually cold and confident, held a flicker of unease. She placed a spirit scroll on his desk. A petition, Lord Econ. From the Lagos City Elders. Econ snatched it. The scroll was made of woven reeds, smelling of damp earth. Unfurling it, he saw not words but living moss-forming symbols. A demand. Asterisk, cease all shadow mining beneath the sacred Ocean Grove. Withdraw circle presence. The land remembers its protectors. Asterisk, signed not with a name, but the unmistakable imprint of a thorned vine. This filth. Econ roared, slamming his fist. The moss symbols trembled but held firm. How dare she? That grove sits on a nexus of nightmare energy. The circle needs it. Celicy flinched. The elders. They say thorned root walks among them. They say the trees grow around our mining outpost, swallowing them. Workers are vanishing, Econ. Whispering about wolf eyes in the dark. Before Econ could erupt, the floor vibrated. Not the hum of the building's dark engines. A deeper, resonant thrum, like a giant heartbeat deep within the earth. The obsidian window overlooking the city shimmered. For a terrifying second, the sprawling metropolis below seemed overlaid with a phantom jungle, vast, green, and impossibly ancient. Towering trees replaced skyscrapers. Luminous rivers snaked through concrete canyons. And watching from the canopy, eyes like captured stars. Econ stumbled back. What sorcery is this? The vision vanished as quickly as it came, leaving only the familiar, hated cityscape. But on the window ledge, where nothing grew, a single perfect night-blooming flower had pushed through the seamless obsidian. Its petals glowed faintly. Celicy gasped, clutching her belly. She's here, she whispered, terror stripping her voice bare. Not just in the jungle, everywhere. Adana's temple, deep jungle. Adana stood not in a building, but in a cathedral formed by the interwoven branches of millennia-old trees. Moonlight filtered down, dappling the soft moss underfoot. Before her knelt not supplicants but representatives. A haggard government minister whose city's water was poisoned by circle runoff. A tribal elder whose sacred lands were being strip-mined for shadow stones. A mother whose child was marked by a circle curse. Adana listened. Not with ears, but with the roots beneath her, the wind in the high canopy, the silent song of the stones. She felt their fear, their desperation, the crushing weight of the circle's shadow. Thorned root, the elder pleaded, tears cutting paths through the ritual paint on his face. They take the heart of the land. Our ancestors weep. Will you stop them? Adana looked past them through the veil of leaves. She saw the phantom jungle superimposed over Econ's city. She felt the thrum of power she'd sent through the earth, a warning pulse. She saw the single flower blooming impossibly on his obsidian ledge. A message. A claim. The circle feeds on fear, Adana said, her voice echoing slightly, amplified by the living temple. It breaks the balance. It forgets the old pacts. She raised her hand. A vine snaked down from the canopy, offering her a small rough pouch made of spider silk. Inside pulsed with a soft, green light, concentrated forest essence. They will not stop because we ask nicely. She handed the pouch to the elder. Plant this. Where the shadow bites deepest. Water it with tears of defiance. Sing to it the songs your grandmothers sang. Her eyes, reflecting the moonlight and the distant city lights, held no mercy. The forest remembers how to fight. It is waking up. And it is hungry. The representative from the poison city stepped forward. And Econ, the Shadow King. A slow, dangerous smile touched Adana's lips. It held no warmth, only the patient ferocity of a predator. Econ, she said softly, the name falling like a dead leaf, is already lost. He just doesn't know he's walking in my thorns yet. His fear, it is the sweetest water for the roots. She turned, the thundercloud silk swirling around her like gathering storm clouds. Go. Plant the seeds. The storm is coming. And this time, she glanced back, her eyes blazing with ancient green fire, it answers to the forest queen. The air crackled. Somewhere, far away in his tower of glass and shadow, Ikon felt a phantom thorn pierce his heart. The jungle air hummed. Not with insects, but with the low, resonant pulse of deep roots shifting beneath the temple floor. Adana stood at the edge of the open-air sanctuary, the thundercloud silk of her robe whispering against moss-covered stones. The representatives had gone, carrying their spider silk pouches, seeds of rebellion saturated with ancient forest essence. Her warning hung heavy in the humid air. The storm is coming. Ikon's tower high above the choking city. The night-blooming flower on Ikon's obsidian ledge pulsed with a soft, sickly green light. He couldn't bring himself to touch it. To destroy it felt like inviting worse. To leave it felt like surrender. Selassie watched him from the doorway, one hand protectively cradling her swollen belly, the other clutching a sleek, dark communication orb. Fear radiated off her like heat haze. They found Kofi, she said, her voice tight. The foreman from the Ocean Grove mine. Ikon whirled, shadows writhing around his clenched fists. Alive. Selassie shook her head, her snake tattoos seeming to writhe under the flickering light of the cursed flower. Not exactly. He walked out of the jungle this morning. Just walked. Straight into the village square. His eyes. She shuddered. They were pure green. Like deep forest pools. He didn't speak. Just pointed back towards the mine shaft, and then... Spit it out, woman. Then vines, she whispered, her knuckles white on the orb. Thick black vines covered in thorns like knives. They burst out of his mouth. Out of his eyes. Grew so fast. Wrapped him. Pulled him apart like rotten fruit. Right there. In front of everyone. The thorns. They dug into the stone square. Growing. Ikon felt cold sweat prickle his scalp. Not just death. A message. An invasion. Adana wasn't just hiding in jungles. She was turning his world into her territory. The mine. Gone, Selassie breathed. The entrance, it sealed. Not collapsed. Like a wall of living wood fused together. Thorns as big as spears guard it. Anyone who gets close. The air smells sweet like rotting flowers. Then they fall asleep. Forever. Panic cold and sharp, cut through Ikon's rage. This wasn't just defiance. This was war waged by the earth itself. He snatched the communication orb from Selassie. Get me the Lagos sector commander. Now. Mobilize the Shadow Guard. Burn that grove. Burn everything around it. Salt the earth. His voice cracked. The orb flickered. Instead of the commander's grim face, the swirling darkness within coalesced into a different visage, gaunt, impossibly ancient, skin like cracked leather stretched over bone. Eyes like smoldering embers in deep sockets. One of the circle's inner cabal. Burn the grove. The voice was dry leaves crushed underfoot, yet it vibrated with terrifying power. Fool. You poke the hornet's nest with a stick. Thorned root's power is woven into that land now. Burn it and you feed her fury. You unleash the rot upon yourselves. Ikon flinched. What do we do? She's turning the land against us. She uses the old bones. The cabal member hissed. The forgotten spirits. The deep roots. Your failure, Ikon, has woken a plague we contained for centuries. Now you will contain it. Find her weakness. Not in the jungle. In her. The ember eyes glowed brighter. Remember the village girl she was. Find what she loved before the forest claimed her. Find it and break it. The connection severed, leaving Ikon trembling. Weakness. Adana seemed carved from stone and storm now. What softness could possibly remain? His gaze fell on Selassie, pale and trembling by the door. On her rounded belly. His heir. A cruel, desperate idea began to fester in the pit of his fear. Adana had sacrificed her own dreams for love once. What if she saw history repeating? What if she saw an innocent about to be born into the shadow she hated? A slow, ugly smile touched Ikon's lips. Not a plan born of strength but of terrified malice. Celicy, he said, his voice suddenly smooth, oily. We need to talk about our child's future, and how to make the forest queen bleed. The phantom jungle Lagos streets. Chaos bloomed like poisonous flowers. Not from bombs or riots but from the relentless push of green. Where the circle's shadow mining had scarred the earth, the ground now buckled. Not with destruction but with terrifying accelerated life. In the slums bordering a drained marsh, a child kicked a deflated ball down a dusty alley. The ball rolled into a patch of cracked earth near a leaking circle chemical pipe. Overnight, that patch became a riot of impossible ferns, thick as a man's arm, dripping sweet, soporific sap. 2 circle enforcers sent to clear the weed vanished inside the fronds. Only their polished boots were found the next morning, roots already growing through the leather. Downtown, outside a gleaming circle bank tower, the carefully manicured ornamental shrubs mutated. Their branches thickened, grew barbs and snaked out like whips when a circle executive approached. Thorns ripped his tailored suit and drew blood that smoked faintly green on contact. The shrubs now formed an impenetrable hissing thicket around the main entrance. People whispered. At first in fear, then in something darker. Hope. A hope laced with primal terror. They saw phantom wolves with starry eyes padding down crowded market lanes at dusk, vanishing if stared at directly. They heard the distant rhythmic beat of a great drum thumping up from the sewers, felt it vibrate in their bones. The city wasn't just under siege, it was being rewritten. And at the center of the green storm, unseen but felt in every shiver of leaf and groan of earth, was thorned root. Adana's temple, the calm before. Adana felt it all. The surge of life in the poisoned places. The terror of the circle. The fragile, burgeoning defiance of the people. It flowed through her roots, sang in her blood. She stood in her jungle cathedral, not triumphant but watchful. A queen surveying her awakening kingdom. The high priest of the old ways approached, his riverstone skin reflecting the dappled moonlight filtering through the ancient canopy. The seeds take root, forest queen, he murmured, his voice a respectful rumble. The land remembers its strength. But the circle, they coil in the shadows. They plot. Adana closed her eyes, extending her senses through the vast, whispering network of roots and rivers. She felt the cold, grasping tendrils of the circle's shadow magic probing the edges of her reclaimed territories. She felt their frustration, their growing fear. And she felt something else. A sharp, malicious intent focused not on the land but on her. A personal venom. They seek weakness, she stated, opening eyes that glowed faintly green. They look for the village girl buried beneath the thorns. Is she there? The high priest asked, his galactic eyes searching her face. Adana touched the spirit drum. She is the root. The beginning. Not the weakness but the source of the strength. They will not understand that. A flicker of something ancient and cold passed over her features. They will try to wound her. To wound me. Suddenly, the deep, resonant pulse of the earth shifted. A discordant note. A ripple of distress, not from the city but from closer. From the jungle. Adana's head snapped up. The fireflies swirling around her throne dimmed. The leaves above stilled their whispering. What is it? The high priest asked, instantly alert. Adana tilted her head, listening to a sound only she could perceive. A sound carried on the wind from the direction of the nearest village, nestled on the jungle's edge. A village where she had once been just Adana, before the circle, before Econ. A village where her old, frail grandmother still lived, the keeper of the oldest songs, the one who first placed the spirit drum in her hands. They found her, Adana whispered, the words dropping like stones into the sudden silence. Her calm fractured, revealing a glimpse of raw, primal fury beneath. Econ. He dares touch the roots of my roots. The air crackled. The phantom jungle superimposed over Lagos shimmered violently, trees groaning, rivers churning. In Econ's tower, miles away, the night-blooming flower on his ledge exploded in a shower of razor-sharp, glowing thorns. One embedded itself in the obsidian wall, vibrating with furious energy. The forest queen's eyes blazed with the cold, terrifying fire of a betrayed earth. The patient storm was over. The hunt had begun. The jungle held its breath. The rhythmic pulse of the earth beneath Adana's bare feet faltered, replaced by a single discordant shriek carried on the wind, not sound but pure, distilled terror. It emanated from the direction of her grandmother's village, a place of soft earth, singing streams, and the scent of drying herbs. The place where the spirit drum first learned her touch. The high priest saw the change ripple through the forest queen. Her stillness wasn't calm anymore. It was the terrible stillness of a cobra poised to strike. The green fire in her eyes didn't just blaze. It consumed. The leaves overhead turned brittle, the air crackled with ozone, and the phantom jungle superimposed over Lagos writhed violently. Towering spectral trees groaned, their roots tearing phantom fissures through concrete. Luminous rivers boiled. He took her, Adana breathed. The words were soft, colder than glacial ice. He laid hands on the root of my roots. Econ's fortified compound edge of the dying city. He hadn't dared stay in the glass tower. He'd fled to a squat brutalist circle outpost built atop an old, forgotten shrine, its walls reinforced with shadowstone and warded with screaming spirit sigils. Deep in its damp, cold heart, in a cell lined with lead and silence, sat the old woman. Adana's grandmother looked impossibly small, swallowed by the harsh light and sterile metal. Yet her back was straight. Her eyes, clouded with age but sharp with ancient knowing, held no fear. Only a profound sadness. She clutched a simple worn pouch of herbs against her chest. Econ watched her through a one-way spirit mirror, Selassie hovering nervously behind him. "See?" he hissed, trying to convince himself more than her. "She's just an old woman. Flesh and bone. Breakable. Adana's weakness." Selassie stared at the frail figure. "She doesn't look weak, Econ. She looks like deep water." "Silence." Econ snapped. He activated the mirror's communication rune. His voice boomed into the cell, distorted, monstrous. "Old mother. Your granddaughter wages war. She turns the land against the circle. Make her stop. Call her off. Or your years end here in darkness and pain." The old woman didn't flinch. She lifted her head slowly, her milky eyes seeming to look through the mirror, directly at Econ's hidden face. When she spoke, her voice was dry reeds whispering, yet it filled the observation room. "Child of shadows," she rasped. "You pluck the root thinking to kill the tree. But the root is deeper than you know. It drinks from the first dark. It remembers when your kind were sparks in the void." She shook her head slowly. "You have not taken a hostage. You have swallowed lightning." A cold dread, deeper than any circle magic, began to seep into Econ's bones. He slammed his fist on the console. "Enough riddles. Contact Adana. Tell her to surrender her power, to disband her thorns, or you die slowly." The old woman closed her eyes. A faint, almost inaudible hum began, not from her throat, but from the herb pouch against her chest. It resonated with the deep stone beneath the compound. The jungle's fury. Adana didn't run. She flowed. One moment she was in the temple clearing, the next the jungle itself became her chariot. Ancient trees bent like bows, snapping her forward on currents of rushing wind and displaced earth. Vines lashed out before her, clearing paths that hadn't existed moments before. Animals fell silent, then surged alongside her, panthers with eyes like polished obsidian, silent owls guiding the way, a river of driver ants parting the undergrowth. The forest wasn't just helping, it was projecting her. Her rage was its rage. She felt her grandmother's hum through the soles of her feet, through the roots that networked the continent. It wasn't a call for help. It was a beacon, a target, and a lullaby older than time. The siege begins. Econ felt the first tremor as a low groan deep within the compound's foundations. Then the lights flickered. Not the electric lights, but the spirit wards etched into the walls. Their cold blue light sputtered, dimmed, and was replaced by a creeping, invasive green luminescence that seeped through the seams in the shadowstone. "Report." Econ bellowed into a communication orb. Static hissed back, then a scream, abruptly cut off by a sound like thick roots snapping bone. Outside the compound's high walls, the scorched earth perimeter was no longer barren. Overnight, a dense thicket of razor-thorned brambles had erupted 20 feet high and growing. Circle guards fired spirit lances into it. The thorns absorbed the energy, pulsed brighter, and shot back barbed seeds that embedded in armor, sprouting instantly into strangling vines that pulled men screaming into the green maw. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with a swirling mass of bats and starlings, moving as one chaotic, shrieking entity. They hurled themselves against the compound's energy shields, dying in crackling bursts, but each death weakened the barrier. And beneath it all, the relentless thrum of the great drum shaking the walls. Celicy backed away, clutching her belly, her face white with terror. It's her. She's here. The forest is inside. Econ watched on monitors as lead-lined walls sweated. Not water but thick dark sap that pooled on the floor, then began to sprout tiny glowing mushrooms that pulsed in time with the drumbeat. The air grew thick with the scent of loam and decay. He saw guards panic, firing wildly at shadows that moved like wolves, only to be dragged into ventilation shafts by whip-fast roots. The compound wasn't being attacked, it was being digested. The heart of the storm. Adana stood before the compound's main gate. Not arrived. Simply there. The thorns parted before her like a curtain. She wore no crown, but the air around her shimmered with power. The thundercloud's silk swirled with contained tempests. In her hand she held not her spirit drum, but a simple carved wooden flute, her grandmother's first gift. She raised it to her lips. The sound wasn't music. It was the shriek of tearing metal, the groan of deep earth shifting, the sigh of a dying forest, and beneath it all the piercing pure note of a child's grief. It cut through the shrieking birds, the screams of men, the groaning walls. The compound's reinforced main gate, layered steel and shadow stone, bloomed. Not open. It erupted outward in a shower of splintered metal and pulverized stone, transformed instantly into a colossal twisted archway of living blackened wood thick with thorns the size of swords. Through it Adana walked. The green luminescence inside was now almost blinding. The sap flowed freely, forming glowing streams on the floor. Guards who rushed her found their feet rooted instantly, vines spiraling up their legs, thorns piercing armor and flesh, pulling them down into the hungry moss that was rapidly carpeting the metal corridors. Spirit lances fizzled and died in their hands, drained by the overwhelming life force saturating the air. Adana walked with purpose. The compound's layout unfolded in her mind, mapped by the roots now penetrating every wall, every floor. She felt her grandmother's beacon, close now, pulsing from below. And she felt Econ's frantic, terrified presence nearby. Fizzle. Econ stood before the old woman's cell, a jagged bone knife held shakily in his hand. Celicy cowered behind him. Last chance, witch, he screamed, his voice cracking. Call her off or I spill your blood on this stone. The old woman opened her eyes. She looked past Econ towards the corridor. A small, serene smile touched her lips. She comes, shadow child. Not for me. For you. The lightning has reached your heart. The heavy lead-lined door to the detention block groaned. Not opening. Melting. Flowing like wax, revealing the dense, knotted wood beneath, which then sprouted, twisted, and formed a new archway identical to the one at the main gate. Adana stepped through. Her gaze swept past Econ, locking onto her grandmother. Relief, fierce and protective, warred with the cold fury in her eyes. Grandmother, she breathed. Then her eyes shifted to Econ. The fury one. It wasn't hatred. It was the implacable judgment of the natural world against a blight. Econ stumbled back, raising the bone knife, not towards Adana but towards the old woman. Stay back. Or she dies. Adana didn't move. She lifted the wooden flute again but didn't play. She simply looked at the bone knife in Econ's hand. The bone knife sprouted. Tiny hair-like roots erupted from its hilt and blade, burrowing into Econ's hand with agonizing speed. He screamed, dropping the knife as the roots coiled up his arm, burrowing under his skin, seeking the bone beneath. He clawed at them but they were part of him now. "No," he shrieked, collapsing to his knees as the roots pulsed, thickening, turning his arm into a twisted woody appendage. Moss began to bloom on his shoulder. Adana stepped forward, past his writhing form. The cell door dissolved into fragrant sawdust. She knelt before her grandmother, gently taking her hands. "I am here, grandmother." The old woman touched Adana's cheek, her fingers tracing the lines of power etched there by the forest. "By fierce root," she whispered. "You came home." Behind them Econ's screams turned guttural, choked. Vines burst from his mouth, silencing him. His skin cracked like dry bark, revealing the green glow beneath. His eyes widened in final, silent horror as they too turned the deep, endless green of the primordial forest. He wasn't killed. He was assimilated. His body slumped, then began to sink into the moss-covered floor, becoming just another nutrient node in the forest now reclaiming the compound. Celisy watched, paralyzed, a hand pressed to her mouth. Adana turned her head, those ancient green eyes meeting hers. There was no malice, only a profound, terrifying indifference. "Go," Adana said, her voice the rustle of leaves in a sacred grove. "Take your child. Leave the shadows. Grow towards the sun or the roots will find you too." Celisy didn't hesitate. She fled, scrambling over the groaning, transforming floor, leaving the forest queen and her grandmother amidst the ruins of Econ's ambition. Epilogue: The Forest Queen's Crown. Adana walked her grandmother back to the village under a sky cleared of phantom trees. The jungle retreated to its borders, though Lagos now bore permanent scars, parks grown wilder, rivers running clearer, and the skeletal remains of circle structures slowly being consumed by relentless green. Where Econ's compound stood, a new, impossibly dense grove of blackthorn trees pulsed with soft light. The high priest found Adana sitting on a simple stool outside her grandmother's hut, the spirit drum resting in her lap. She wasn't wearing thundercloud silk but simple earth-colored cloth. Yet her presence was more immense than ever. "The circle retreats, Forest Queen," he said, bowing low. "They fear the Thorns. The world whispers your name." Adana looked out not at the jungle but at the village children playing near the newly vibrant stream. "The fight is not over," she said softly. "The shadows hunger. But the roots are deep now. The balance remembers its strength." She placed a hand on the drum. "I am not their queen to rule. I am the thorn that pricks the hand that poisons. I am the root that breaks the stone. I am the memory of the green world." She looked at him, her eyes holding the calm, terrifying depth of an untouched forest pool. "Let them whisper. Let them fear. The forest is awake. And it watches." She closed her eyes, feeling the sun warm her skin, the earth solid beneath her, the pulse of life humming through the spirit drum and into her bones. She had walked out of a courtroom trembling once. Now, continents trembled with her quiet breath. She didn't need a throne of gold or shadow. Her crown was woven from living thorns and starlight, rooted in the deepest, darkest earth, and it was finally, perfectly hers. The silence wasn't submission anymore. It was the patience of the enduring earth. And it was louder than any scream. The end.